Hi, this is Anita from the Global Trade Gal, where we like to talk about all different things to do with trade. As many of you may know, I am here in Hanoi, Vietnam. I've spent my life in the export business. So I've seen a lot of changes take place during my lifetime. But one of the changes I've seen, which has happened recently, is a lot of these talks about tariffs or protectionism, or that somehow countries or companies or people feeling like, well, if we could just bring it all back and make it all ourselves, then wouldn't that be better? But the truth is that there's a lot of products, for example, that we make, which will never be made again in countries like the United States. For example, nobody wants to go into the furniture business anymore to manufacture furniture. Sure, you might say, well, there could be some people that are doing it with, high-tech machines and other things. But when it comes stuff to some of the handmade finishes, the hand-scraped finishes, even for furniture, some of the weaving that needs to take place, some of the other things, people in America just don't have the skills anymore to be able to do that. And I just don't see where the younger generation really wants to do it. So where does this take us for globalization? If you start to tariff everything or put tariffs on every single thing that enters a country like the United States, well, essentially, the people that are going to be paying for this, and I've said this many times in this podcast, is the consumer. The consumer is the one who pays. It's not the country that's exporting it. We as exporters, we quote a price, which is basically a price which is known as an FOB price. FOB price means that it's a price basically free on board. Essentially means that it's our role as the manufacturer to get the goods to the port so the port can get on the ship. Our customers then will usually nominate who they want to ship the goods. We will pick up the container from them. We will load the container. We will seal the container. We'll get the container back to the port. We'll do the local customs for the country we're exporting for, and then we will get the container on the ship. Once the container's on the ship, it's out of our hands. It's in the hands of the shipper or the shipping company. We no longer have anything to do with the container. We couldn't even get the container back if we wanted to get the container back because it's already in the hands of the shipping company itself. And once it hits the United States, then when it comes to things for like the taxes, the tariffs, all the other things, they need to be paid by the importer. And so it's the U.S. company that's paying them. So when the U.S. company has to pay, say, 25% more on something being imported, they are going to have to usually almost always pass that on to you as the consumer or pass it on to the person who's buying the product. Why? Because of the fact that they don't have that kind of money in the product itself to be able to swallow that cost. And second of all, it is not the exporter who's paying. So, when something is exported from a country like China and goes to the United States, there's some kind of disbelief where many people believe that somehow China is paying the extra 25%. China is not paying it. It is being paid by the importer, or the U.S. company is paying that. And then ultimately, it's the consumer who will pay more for that product or pay more for, whatever they're buying. Essentially, why, globalization or, the tariffs hurt business, make prices increase. And one of the things which has happened in the world, which I'm a great believer in, is, this belief of globalization, where countries should do what countries are good at. And if that happens where, if somebody's really good at weaving baskets, well, let them weave the baskets. People in the United States don't want to sit in their home and weave baskets. So let them weave the baskets, import the baskets from them. And then if you're really good at something else like selling cars or airplanes or whatever else it is, let them buy those from you because they're not producing those. So that's really what trade is, or free trade is about. It's about people using what they're good at and then buying and selling from each other. So trade policies really can have a huge impact on global economies. It basically hurt everyone if suddenly a tax or tariff of 50% or 25% or whatever it may be is put onto a product First of all, the consumer is paying more, so the consumer will buy less of that because they just simply won't be able to afford it. The importer will have to put that cash out, and that gets very expensive. So that means that they won't be buying much of anything else because they're using a lot of their cash or their cash flow to be able to import that product. The other thing is that the manufacturer also loses out because the companies aren't going to be buying as much because essentially, sales have stopped. And so they're not buying as much as they used to. And so that means that everybody, in this sense, is basically losing out because of the higher tariffs or taxes or whatever else that is going on with this. That's why trade policies have a huge global impact for everybody. And this does not just extend for products such as, baskets that I've been talking about. It can also have to do for things like steel. For example, if a tariff is put on steel, then suddenly if somebody needs to buy steel for, maybe they need the steel for housing, for building, for manufacturing some type of product, suddenly that is going to cost them more than if they didn't have the tariff on the steel. This is one reason why I'm really quite anti-tariff, not only because I'm an exporter, but also because I just see that there's a lot of craziness going on. For example, I recently found out for almost everything we buy in my industry, home furnishing, home decor, from China is under a 25% tariff. That is just usually a given. Almost everything we do is under a 25% tariff. But then I was looking the other day at toys, in fact, plush toys, and discovered that plush toys have no tariff. So you would think that, if you're going to equalize it between, the different type of categories, why is it plush toys don't have a tariff and then something like a tray or a lamp has a tariff? The United States certainly could make plush toys if they wanted. And there's people there that are actually producing plush toys, but yet toys don't, for some reason, didn't come under the tariff. But then some of the raw materials which manufacturers need in order to produce their products in the United States are under the tariff. So for me, all of the tariffs just do not make sense. They're kind of like a little bit of craziness going on. This is just my own opinion about it, because I sort of feel like, why not put a tariff on plush toys? If you're going to put a tariff on anything, you would think toys would have something to have a tariff on it. Get more toys produced in the United States. But the truth is that nobody in the United States is probably going to be producing many toys. So that's why plush toys are probably not under the tariff. I don't know why they're not under the tariff. It doesn't make sense to me at all. But that is just an example of how crazy tariffs can be, that there can be tariffs on certain things and not tariffs on other things. And so, tariffs can also hurt U.S. manufacturers. As I pointed out before, let's say a paint is put on a tariff and they have to buy a special paint from overseas. Suddenly that paint becomes more expensive. They can't buy the paint in the United States, or they can't buy it where they need it. They're not able to get the quality, or maybe not the color, or maybe they're not able to get exactly what they need, or maybe the price is so much more expensive that they need to buy the paint overseas. Well, suddenly if paint is under tariff, they need to pay more for that paint. And that doesn't make sense because they're trying to manufacture in the United States, but at the same time, they need to pay more for that product. I don't know personally whether paint is under a tariff, but I'm just using it as an example as to how a tariff will hurt. It hurts basically everybody. Another big problem with a lot of the trade policies too is that they are not static. In other words, they can change according to the geopolitical shifts. And we see this quite a bit in the United States, what's happening now. Suddenly we have a new president coming in, and so tariffs are being threatened again because tariffs seem to be the popular word that many people like, that somehow they're under this impression that a tariff is paid for by someone else, not by the country that's importing it. So that's one of the issues with a lot of the trade, and one of the challenges of global trade itself is that it's constantly changing. There's political landscapes changing, things are changing. So it's kind of a fluid type of industry where things are changing. Suddenly within a heartbeat, somebody could put a tariff for you on a product you're exporting, and suddenly you're no longer competitive anymore. My co-author, James Johnson, has written a blog on this, the globalization effects on imports and exports, where he's gone into more detail on this. I just wanted to add a few of my thoughts to his thoughts that he has put on this. But this, really tariffs and trade, that's why I'm a great believer in free trade, that we should really all work, as countries should work together to make trade as fair and free as possible. Thank you so much for listening. This is Anita from the Global Trade Gal. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. And we'll put a link to our blog in the description so that you can be able to check it out if you're interested in checking out our blog post on this. And if you are in the trade and you've had problems with tariffs, other things, we'd love to hear from you. Love to hear your thoughts on this. And we just thank you so much for being part of our community.